Opiyo. I'm a MANRS fellow. That's the hat I'm wearing for this discussion. I'm a senior network engineer for Workonline Communications, and we offer IP transit services, Pan-African global transit provider. So once again, welcome and thank you. So I'll just share my screen and we can get started. All right. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, great, thanks. So today we're going to be talking about MANRS. MANRS is an acronym. It stands for Mutually Agreed Norms for Routing Security. So we'll be looking at this in the context of WISPs, and also those are more smaller and mid-sized service providers, just to see how we can go about securing our networks. Maybe a start would be to discuss the problem that we're seeing. And before we go there, I would like to just briefly go over how routing works. As we all know, we have about 69,000 core networks on the internet at the moment. So those are like 69, just over 69,000 autonomous systems, which means these are 69,000 networks that are currently interconnected to form what we know and call the internet. And these networks obviously speak to one another using the Border Gateway Protocol, which is BGP, to share the reachability information. What is this? These are the prefixes that they announce to one another in order to indicate how they can be reached and accessed. And the routers then build a best path based on this routing information received, and they're able to then transfer this traffic across their ecosystem. So when BGP was developed, it was basically an honor system. There was no security in mind at the time that BGP was developed. So it meant people to just implicitly trusted one another to do the right thing, which was fine way back when the internet was new and there were very few users at the time. But as the internet has grown and more of us rely on it for our day-to-day lives, especially now, even more so in these times that we're in, you rely on it for your education, for your work, for your shopping, everything. So there is a need to secure the routing information that is going across our networks. So what happens when we have this insecure routing? What are some of the things that can happen? And what is the impact of that to us as ourselves, as operators and as users? The insecure routing has significant impact on each and every one of us, where you can have countries taken offline, you can have attackers steal your information, you can have packets being intercepted and changed. And even in the state, when we're speaking about things like the deep state, I think it's something which is very critical for every network operator to focus on. And some of these are actually quite large scale, right? We constantly have routing incidences. Even right at this moment, there's a routing incident happening somewhere in the world, and some have had really large scale effects and side effects for the people involved. There was the cryptographic Bitcoin, was it Bitcoin or one of them that was diverted when some prefixes were hijacked from Amazon, and that cost people actual real money, right? We have DDoS attacks, which prevent people from accessing their resources. So this morning I was taking a look at the incidences that we've had in Kenya. So some of those seem quite international. You're not considering that we do have routing incidences happening even in Kenya daily. So this was just an overview of what happened in Kenya for the month of August. We had about 928 incidences that were detected, of which 156 were root misoriginations, which means someone announced a prefix that didn't actually belong to them or that they were not supposed to originate. There are route leaks where someone caused traffic to transit through their network, and whether or not they were capable of handling all that traffic, that could also lead to a denial of service. And it seems like the greatest culprit is the bogon assignments. And bogons are just prefixes or ASNs that are not supposed to be announced over the internet. So things like private IP address space or reserved IP address space or ASNs. It seems that those have been in use in some of our networks in Kenya. And taking a look at the culprits, we can see about 776 different times networks have been identified to have caused one of these routing incidences. So that shows that the problem is real and the problem is here with us as well. And taking a look at the threats that we are seeing for what are some of these issues we're seeing. We're seeing prefix hijacking, which, as I explained, is when an operator announces an IP address space they shouldn't, which can lead to packets being forwarded to the wrong place, which can lead to a malicious attacker getting information that they shouldn't have, and breaking the chain of trust on a secure operation or service. You could have denial of service attacks, you could have traffic interception and inspection, all of which are serious repercussions. There's route leaks where someone is maybe configuring a new service and they end up announcing a prefix that they shouldn't to the wrong person. For instance, you can announce prefix from your transit provider to your peer, which could lead that traffic to flow through your network, which it shouldn't. And there's also spoofing, which a lot of malicious actors use to do denial of service attacks. So for instance, the famous YouTube hijack that happened in 2008, where we had a network that announced more specific prefixes for YouTube while they were trying to manage their own load balancing or whatever it was on their network. And they caused all the YouTube traffic to be announced to their network, to flow through their network. And they obviously didn't have the YouTube to serve everyone. And as a result, there was a denial of service for YouTube services in that instance. And even route leaks where we had, for instance, Malaysia Telecom, which announced some prefixes as the best path, and it caused traffic to flow over their network rather than through a more legitimate path for that service. An IP address spoofing where you can have DNS amplification attacks where you fake your IP address and you cause traffic to then be sent to the actual resource with that IP address and result in them having a denial of service when they're getting so many responses, as in the case of a DNS amplification attack. So as you can see, the threats are real and they're happening, and they are sometimes accidental, whereas sometimes they're malicious. And this is not to say that there are no tools that we have available that can help us in mitigating some of these instances and some of these incidences. So some of the things, and many of them come inbuilt with your routing, for instance, with your device and in the software that we are currently using in our routers. Things like prefix list and AS path filtering. This is something you can simply enable on your network. Based on your routing policy, you can be able to prevent the reception or the announcing of illegitimate prefixes. There's RPKI validator. RPKI is simply the cryptographic verification of number resources. So things such as tying your prefix to your AS to make sure that no one else is able to originate those, right? That would be an invalid origination of those. And it's stored in the routing registries. So in Africa, for instance, our routing registry would be in Afrinic. So you would go and sign your number resources and ensure that they are tied to your organization. There's the IRR2 set, there's BGPQ3, which can use to build filter list, automate that, or it can help you build the filter list for your network so that you're not doing a lot of manual work. So the thing is, while these tools exist to help us, there's still not enough deployment, not enough networks or operators are actually taking the time to properly deploy the tools that are available to prevent these routing security instances. And so a standard approach was required in order for us to improve it, because it's, at the end of the day, the global routing ecosystem, it's a tragedy of commons. If one person messes up, it impacts everyone else. If everyone does the right thing, everyone benefits from it, right? So coming up with MANRS, which is what we are talking about, is just a way for us to come together as network operators and define a baseline that we can use to secure our networks. So this is not to say that by implementing MANRS, you're going to fix all the routing security issues that exist, but it's a very big step towards preventing the most common incidences that threaten our networks at this stage. So what are the MANRS actions? Maybe we should go to that before we say what we need to do. So what are the MANRS actions? So MANRS has 4 actions that an operator is required to implement, and only 2 of them are mandatory. But for starters, we have 2 which are operational and other 2 that are procedural steps. So we have filtering, which is a best practice. You should prevent the propagation of incorrect routing information. So for yourself as a network operator, you always have to filter what you send out to your peers and to your transit, as well as filtering what you're receiving from your customers, right? So this will prevent things like the route hijacks or the route leaks that we'll see that could bring down entire networks and services. There's anti-spoofing, which is now preventing traffic with a spoofed IP address. So it means that if you're receiving traffic from an interface, I must ensure that I actually expected to see traffic from that IP address coming from that interface. And you can use things such as URPF in order to ensure that this is actually the case. And in terms of coordination, this is really about creating more information for people to know how they can reach you. So you'd have created your route objects, your person objects in the routing registry, for in our case in Afrinic. You'd create routing objects and the like, and even in peering DB, where you'd share information about your network, you would say where you're located, how many prefixes you actually announce, because that's another thing. How would someone create a filter list for you if they don't know what they should expect from you? So things like creating and making this information publicly available, creating a routing policy so that people know, okay, this is the type of network these are my routing policies, I have these certain communities and this is what they mean. That helps other operators when they're trying to troubleshoot maybe a routing incident they may be seeing with you, and makes coordination much simpler for everyone involved and much faster as well to resolve, because some of this is just a matter of getting to the right person, speaking to the right person as quickly as possible in order for them to fix the issue that you might have detected. And there's global validation. This is where you're publishing your routing information, where you've put your data on the IRR. You have a database that you've stored your routes and your prefixes in, and also you've stored them in peering DB. So that helps other people know that they can validate and check against that while they're creating their prefix lists for you. So there was a study done, and this was done by ISOC and the MANRS team, in order to understand, is there a business case for MANRS, or is there a business case for routing security? And the findings were that yes, for many organizations, they do think about security. It's the top, one of the top things that network operators are thinking about on their networks. So the desire to have a secure network is high, but the knowledge of maybe how to secure the networks is not as high. And that enterprises or customers are willing to require some kind of routing security compliance from their service providers. And MANRS provides a simple framework for them to check against. So this means that it's a value add thing for an operator to have a secure network, right? And I think for especially wireless service providers and WISPs, there are a lot of them that come up, and the competition is stiff, right? And it's difficult to differentiate your services from one another. Everyone's like, fine, I'll give you 5 MB at this price. And at some point you can't compete on price alone. So adding something like MANRS and routing security to your portfolio increases that differentiation for you and for your network. That allows you to get more customers and maybe even additional revenue based on this additional work that you'll be taking on. So why should a WISP join MANRS? There are a couple of reasons, and one of them is once you join MANRS, you're in a community. And the thing about being in a community is, number one, you have someone to help you out with your issues. Whenever you are having a problem, you're in a community of people who have the same intention as you, which is to secure the routing system. And they're able to quickly help you, guide you in resolving operational issues where they may arise, right? So it will strengthen not only your security, but it also increases your community centeredness within as operators, right? Away from the competition, it gives you somewhere you can have technical exchange with others. You're able to derive some value add from it because now you're having secure services and you can charge more for that. And it signals to your customers that you're a serious network. And especially as a WISP, a lot of you are growing, you're getting to that mid-sized operator status, right? And this is when the routing gets complicated. This is when you're starting to get peers. You're starting to have more than one transit. And this routing security becomes even more important, especially as the complexity grows in your network. And it also helps you lock in your customers because they're like, I want to be the secure person to handle my routing. So as more of you target enterprises away from home users and you start to target more enterprises, then security becomes a very, very critical factor for them to decide to take services from your network. So what does joining MANRS entail? So if you want to join MANRS, what does a person have to do? All you have to do is fill a form on the website, go to manrs.org and indicate that you would like to join MANRS. They'll ask you a few questions, probably run a few tests just to determine, are you actually doing the filtering? Have you actually registered your routing resources on the routing registry? Are you doing any anti-spoofing? Are you on the peering DB? And it's simple things. And there is help that you can get. There's a lot of information and resources on the MANRS website, which can give you the implementation guidelines along with configuration examples of exactly how to do each and every single one of these MANRS, and even to the extent of showing you on different OSs that you use. So we know some people use Cisco, some use MikroTik or whatever, but you'll be able to find resources for whichever vendor that is your preferred vendor at the time. There is also a MANRS observatory where if you are signing up to be a MANRS member, you're able to go and see which routing incidents have you caused or have happened through your network. And that gives you an indication of how you're doing. You're able to tell how many incidences in general have occurred, and gather more information about your own network, right? So it uses publicly accessible data. So these are things from root collectors and the like that people have taken time to study and present that information graphically for you so that you can quickly understand what is the security posture of your network at any given moment. And you're also able to ask for more things if you want to see more details about what's happening in your network or in your country. You're able to ask for those features to be included, right? Because now you're part of the community. There's also a hands-on lab that has been designed, which can help you practice, because you don't want to go and say, today, I'm going to change everything on my network, right? Without having somewhere where you can test it out. So MANRS has a lab that we are able to give you access to as operators to give it a try. It has some different vendors as well. So you can, if you're used to Cisco, you can use a Cisco iOS. If you're MikroTik, you can use that. And Juniper doesn't have every single vendor, but we've tried to have the main ones so that you're able to actually run your tests, understand how to implement the MANRS, and see the impact of having MANRS versus not having MANRS, and getting you to a comfortable position in implementing MANRS and helping you join. And you can learn more at manrs.org. So for the most part, I think the lab will be the most interesting for most people because you want to test it out. But I'm happy to hear about what have been your experiences so far in terms of routing security. What do you think would be most helpful to you as a wireless service provider, and what you would like to see happen that could help you actually implement these measures that we're proposing, so that we can actually secure the routing ecosystem together. So I'm opening the floor for the Q&A. You can post them on the Q&A tab, and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you for your time. So do we have any questions? Has anyone actually heard of MANRS, and has anyone implemented them or begun to implement them? And have they had any issues implementing MANRS in their network so far? I'm seeing a couple of people here who have started to, I'm seeing a couple of questions here. One from Cyrus, he's asking, has MikroTik made any progress with RPKI? I believe they have made some, they have made some progress with the RPKI, and it's currently available on their latest OS version. Brian Longo is asking whether MikroTik routers are supported in the lab. Yes, you just get, it's kind of a set topology. So you have a router, which you will be responsible for, and then there are transit providers and customers. And the lab takes you through how you would implement MANRS to prevent the routing incidences from any one of those other operators that you would be interacting with. So yes, to answer your question, yes, it does support, it is supported in the lab. Tony, are we able to get a copy of the slides? I'm sure we can share those with you. Is there any cookbook for implementation of MANRS at an IXP? Yes, there is. There's a lot of resources on the MANRS website. There is MANRS for IXPs as well. There's MANRS for CDNs. There are lots of guidelines to assist IXPs and all types of operators in implementing these routing security measures. Oh, could you get links to, in the context of wireless ISPs, do they have a role in MANRS, or is it for their upstreams? Everyone has a role in MANRS because you also have some customers. You are also running a network, right? Your upstreams could also mess up, and you must protect yourself from their potential mess up, right? Number two, you're not always going to be a small wireless ISP, a stub network. So one of the things that even made it, for instance, for Workonline to sign up to MANRS is because from the beginning, we designed the network with security in mind. So most of the MANRS actions, they're actually best practices that networks are advised to implement. However, because not every single person does it, the reason MANRS came up is to encourage this, so that networks who are doing it can show that, yes, this is something we are doing and it's something important to do, and kind of rally everyone else around this mission to secure the routing system. So your mess up could hurt someone and someone else's mess up could hurt you. So there is a context and a space for every single operator to implement MANRS on their network. Cyrus, could you get the links for MikroTik RPKI implementation? I could check for that for you. At the moment, I don't use MikroTik, but I'm sure a lot of other operators do, and I could find some resources to point you to for that. And then Brian, is it possible to arrange remote hand-holding support when implementing MANRS? From who, from where, if possible? What are the costs? Yes, you can get local support. Once you sign up for MANRS, you are expressing your interest in doing it. Doesn't mean you've done the actual. It doesn't mean you've done the actual thing. So when you start to sign up, the MANRS team is able to take you through the process, show you which areas you need to resolve. And this comes at no cost, because at the end of the day, it's for the good of the internet, right? And I myself, I'm also available. If you need help, you need some brainstorming, or just you have a question, I'm available to assist people on that. So you can reach out to me, can reach out on MANRS website to the MANRS team, and all of us are here to assist you in any way possible to get this done. And we will not charge you for it. What are the projected timelines expected in order to learn MANRS and consequently put to practice network MANRS? The timeline depends on your level of technical understanding. Everyone is different. Some people are quick to do things. Just depends on your level of understanding. The MANRS, the actions themselves are fairly simple. So all you have to do is just implement them in a way. Once you've fully understood them, implementing them should not ideally break your network. So learning about MANRS is something it depends on where you are in terms of configuring, but the actions themselves are very, very simple. They're actually just the baseline, easiest things that you could do in order to secure your network. And there are lots of resources available online, and obviously lots of people who can assist you. Even KENET, we're there. We'll be doing some routing webinars soon and tutorials. So there's a lot of resources. You can always reach out. Another question says, Michelle, thank you for doing the webinar. When joining MANRS, do you have to meet all of the criteria, or only 2 of the 4? So you don't have to meet all of the criteria at the beginning. The goal is for you to try and meet all 4 at the end of it. Some of them are really simple to do. Things like having your records on IRR, that can only take you 5 to 10 minutes to get it done. Set up peering DB, 5 minutes, right? So maybe the things that you would need to do is at least do the filtering for your network and have all your resources registered correctly in the routing registries as a start. Then you can work on the other two as you get to the full MANRS compliance. So we can't force you to do it all at once, but just taking some steps in the right direction is encouraged. Then says, Michelle, can you share contacts handles for any further contact? Yeah, sure. It's just, I guess I'll type it in the chat, Michelle O at workonline.africa. And also if you go to the MANRS website, you'll be able to find some contact information. But yeah. And I think I'm in KENOG as well. So if you're in that, you can always find me. And on LinkedIn as well. That one I'll respond to. So if you can't find me in any of the others, you can get me on LinkedIn and I can happily point you to the right direction. Then what else? Thank you for the presentation. Is there a way to check if my ISP is complying to MANRS? Okay. Well, yes, you can always check some of the things. For instance, obviously for the routing registry stuff, you can easily check those. You can just use the WHOIS database and check whether they've registered their prefixes and their resources. You can also check on obviously PeeringDB easily. Some you can use a looking glass to kind of determine what they're doing. But if you would like access to the MANRS Observatory, I think at this time it's for those who've signed up for MANRS, you're definitely able to see how your network is faring. But obviously if you ask, if you need some help and you'd just like to get some access to the observatory for a while to see how your network is doing, you can always reach out to myself or the MANRS team, and I'll point you in the direct direction to get you an account where you would be able to take a look and see how your network is doing in terms of MANRS. Okay, great webinar. Where does one go for stats on how far Africa is in terms of MANRS compliance? Like how many networks have ROAs created on their prefixes? How many networks don't have updated IR records or even contact information available? Again, I'll go back to the observatory, although that limits maybe how much information you can see. I don't know if, I don't want to put them on the spot, but Israel, could you confirm that for me in terms of seeing the holistic view? But
Yes,
the observatory, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. In fact, the observatory is offering a general view to all people, but also MANRS participants have the advantage of having a more granular view of their own resources, of their status of their network. So we could see also a degree of implementation of RPKI with the fourth action is about global validation, and we have numbers for RPKI and also for IRR. So yes, a general view is available, but that's one of the advantages of being MANRS participant, that you can have like a more specialized view and more personalized for each network once you join.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, so in the observatory, that's where you could see. So even Kevin has added a comment that MANRS Observatory allows drilling down by region or by country. So you can have a good idea of this once you're on the observatory, which you can access by going to manrs.org, and then you would navigate to observatory there as one of the tools. For Cyrus, someone was gracious enough to share some feedback for you. regarding the microtik for RPK, the RPKI on microtik. It's still broken, but they're having a beta release that's going to be on the way. I'm just going to share this with everyone, where you can find the link with more information about the RPKI for microtik. And I'd like to thank Peter for sharing that. Is there a subscription fee? No, there's no subscription fee to Join MANRS. It's not a commercial effort. It's really just an effort to consolidate all the efforts towards securing the routing ecosystem. So it's not something to make money out of in the terms of MANRS side. It's just to create a single kind of portal of a single community that everyone can rally around easily to determine how far we're getting as the global operators in securing the routing ecosystem. All right. Do we have any other questions and comments? So for me, the next step, which I had wanted to take this workshop would be to have the actual lab, which we can schedule. So the lab itself can have 20 users at a time. So it's a fairly simple lab that allows you to test out the MANRS principles. So we would be having a workshop where I can guide at least 20, maximum of 20 people at a time to go through the MANRS lab, try and test out how to implement it and just work it out so they can see how they can do the same on their networks. And I'll be happy to invite the people who joined this webinar, at least now you have an idea of what MANRS is about, to a workshop session where we can go now actually drill down to the technical details of implementing MANRS. So that will be our next engagement. Hopefully you're happy for us to contact you again in order to do this. And remember that to be first come, first served, since we only have like 20 slots at any one instance available. So with that, if we don't have any other questions or comments, I'd really like to thank you for your time, for joining us here to listen to this webinar on securing the routing internet, the routing ecosystem, and it's something that we can't do alone. And we're looking forward to working with you to enhance security for each and every one of us. So have a great afternoon, and thank you once again for joining us. There is a recording for this, so we'll be able to share it with you in case you, or upload it somewhere so that you can go back and review it in case you want to do that. And again, I've shared my contacts there just in case you didn't see them. Michelle.Opiyo at Workonline.Africa, and I'll be happy to help you, or Michelle Opiyo at LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to help you in any way that I can. Oh, you can follow us on Twitter. There's a Twitter handle at Routing MANRS. That's cool. Thank you, Adrian, for that.